Hello everyone, welcome to the video. Today we're going to be discussing, well, not so much Charles I, but what happened after he was executed in 1649, because a lot happened and a lot changed, specifically around 1666. He was a Catholic. He was born to, I think, Anne of Denmark. There were kind of relationships going between the Stuarts and the Holy Roman Empire, but none of them were directly from the Holy Roman Empire. The things that I want to talk about with regards to what happened after he was executed. So the government, the British government, basically took over the rulership of Britain after Charles I was executed. And a lot of things happened with this Cromwell's, and there's a lot of Cromwells in British history. I'm not sure if you've noticed that. Apparently it means crooked well. I don't know what that would tell you, but this man, his children, Oliver Cromwell, there's a lot of Cromwells in our history. He brought in the resettlement of this group, and we'll just have a look here. There's an article written about it in 2005. I'll leave it in the description link. It says here, Jews were welcomed by Cromwell in 1656 by Cromwell, and that was not by Charles I. Charles I was executed before they could arrive. The trouble is, Cromwell did not readmit the Jews to England in 1656. In fact, he didn't readmit them at all. Certainly they'd been expelled by Edward I in 1290. In 1655, Manasseh ben Israel, a leader of the Jewish community in Amsterdam, came to England to persuade Cromwell to let them back in. You had to get rid of the king, didn't they? It's interesting what they say happened afterwards, because you'll see an echo of that in today's society, in all of Western society. In December that year, a conference of lawyers, merchants and theologians met to discuss the issue, but failed to reach a verdict. According to one account, the preachers kept pelting one another so furiously with texts of scripture, and wiping their spectacles from the debates continued for 4 days, though very little was said on the question of the Jays' resettlement. And this is what they're doing right now. They just keep pelting each other with insults and never actually stopping the mass immigration which is going on. They're using the same techniques. Anyway, I won't go into that one anymore. I'll leave the link in the description. But this happened with Cromwell now leading the country. But it wasn't just that which happened. There's a lot of talk about this. This is a birth certificate act. And a lot of people, shall I try and say it? C'est QV Act. Possibly. 1666. And this is about proof of the deceased person, because all the wealth was put into a trust and kept by the estates, which would have been like the churches at one point, but this went to, I think, different trusts. No longer was it under the church, but it could have been. I've got to read up on it. If they were not able to prove their lives after 7 years, then that money went to the government, I guess. And this is what there is a claim about with the birth certificates, because obviously at 7 years old you don't know about all of this, so you can't claim, you can't prove that you're alive because you don't even know about this law. You're not even at the stage of reading legislation. And, you know, most people don't want to read this stuff. I don't want to read it. Presumption of death. What's so interesting about this as well is they've rewritten the law for 2013. See that? the Act. I'm going to say it like that. I'm not French, by the way. I don't know if you can tell. There was no evidence that they were still alive. The people most likely to have heard from them had no contact. So this is what was presumed dead, okay, under this act. And you'll read here that it's not been repealed, despite the fact that they've written a new act about the same thing. Presumption of Death Act 2013. They rewrote it, but they didn't repeal the old law, which is interesting because there is natter amongst the conspiracy theorists that the birth certificate is what this is about, and because your children and the bonds and there's trusts in your name, your name is marketed on the bonds market. You probably have millions of pounds or billions of pounds behind your name, but they haven't repealed this law, even though they've provided a new law, 11 years ago, of the same architecture, basically. Now, we won't just stop there, because look at this. It's got a whole new page. Lists of acts of the Parliament of England from 1666. And then you have it from 1707 to 1800, Parliament of Great Britain. Because when you do law, you do discuss how Scotland and Wales governments were devolved from the United Kingdom. There was a referendum for England to become devolved from the Parliament as well. But I think there was like a 30% turnout and no one did it. No one turned up. So let's have a look at some of these laws. Now, I will also say that I have my own statutes at large volume, I think it's volume 2 of the original legislation. And so it's a very rare book, but we'll have a look through that. It will be basically all of this stuff here on, and we'll have a look to see if Wikipedia is missing out any other information. Taxation Act, Importation Act, importing cattle from Ireland and parts beyond the seas by foreigners. Moss Trooper Act, and this is on the northern borders of England. An act for encouraging coinage, the Coin Act. Taxation number 2, Fire of London Disputes Act, Rebuilding of London Act. They had a lot. They started putting in masses upon masses of laws after 1666. Now, I don't know whether this man was actually executed, or could it have been something similar to what we've just been through, and that's one where they attempt to instill fear into the people. There might have been this great fear of the people rebelling because, my goodness, if the king can get executed, then we certainly can too. And do we want to die? And I'm sure people did, but I think that this could have happened, but it also could have been something to instill fear in the people, to keep them paralysed from reacting to all of these masses upon masses of acts, which suddenly evolved after a new group of people arrived in England. Let's continue. The Navy Act, Taxation Free Act, yeah, never ending, eh? And then the Private Acts. I think they also did Naturalising Act as well, not too long after, which was very close to the Stuart court case, which I've talked about with regards to the slave, 1770, the slave who was released on the UK soil because they would not allow a slave. I think that was when the immigration started, round about then. Well, round about here when naturalisation, because immigration started to America as well, but it also probably started to here, but not on the scale, because obviously there were groups of people who wanted to come here and the British people didn't want them, but they got in anyway. And with that, a lot more written legislation, and in America the Constitution by Freemasons even. So there's all these interesting private acts. Henry Kendall's Estate Act, an act for selling part of the lands and making provision for his children. This is very interesting that the act of to enable Lester Grosvenor and his trustees to sell certain lands for payment of debts. These are quite a lot about debts, isn't it? So I'm interested in learning what that was about, these estate acts. Who was affected by these estate acts? An act for sale. An act for sale, for confirmation of settlement of the estate. So this is something that I'm going to go into because I think you can tell a lot from the law as well with our history. Burying the wool, which required the dead, except plague victims and the destitute, to be buried in pure English woolen shrouds. Well, you know, they're going to go back to that, aren't they? Because they're going to say, no, you can't be dressed in polyester. That's going to kill the world. That's going to kill the environment. I bet this is going to be reinforced again. Shocking, really, the amount of laws that they put through. So this would have been when the money makers arrived, and they don't have it. The Coin Act, they don't have it up here. Please search the Coin Act in Wikipedia. They don't have it. Well, which makes me even more inquisitive. Well, we've got this one, but not the 1666 one, so then would have been amendments made to this. Was an act for the Parliament of England which made it high treason to make or possess equipment useful for counterfeiting coins, because your moneylenders had come in. Your moneylenders had returned, so they needed that law. The Act came into effect 1697, made it treason to knowingly make or mend or begin to proceed to make or mend or assist in making or amending of bloody hell, any stamp, mould or like which could be used to make gold or silver coins, because the moneylenders don't want their toes trodden on. They've got a good thing going here and they're about to set up. When did they set up Bank of England? 60. Of course it was. Of course it was. So it was 1694, did it say? Oh yeah, founded. Yeah, just in time, just after the death of. Because I've heard a lot of conspiracy theorists who are saying all this stuff about Charles I and that he wrote these laws which were very tyrannical. He was insisting on taking money off people or borrowing money off people. And I can imagine that that would have been the case. Because if you know that there's a group of... This is why I need to research it a whole lot deeper. I'm presuming he knew that that people were after him to get rid of him so that they could set up their banks and their money system. And so if he was going to try and prevent that, then he would have had to have written laws for the richer people to help fund him to protect himself and to fight back. And so then you've got the taxation laws. So this is why I need to look into it before 1666 and before he died, before he was executed, or he was alleged to have been executed. Now, he could have been part of it and it was all just a theatre act to traumatise the country into submission, or because he was the people didn't like him apparently because he was Roman Catholic, so he was not supported necessarily by the Protestant society natives, which then makes me wonder, was he planted there for some reason? Because obviously there is this ongoing scepticism towards Roman Catholic monarchs, which of course he was. So why was he, I feel that from 1066 there's just been this massive theatre show, and people have been pawns have been placed in their squares to play the game. Now that might be a bit out there and unbelievable, but then I'm looking through my old books and I'm finding that a lot of the claims made about history today do not correspond with antique history books. So of course I did a video on the Anglo-Saxon buildings, what we're told they were back then today in our history, and what antique history books identify them as being. So there's a lot to research here, and a lot of it is legal. Here we go. Holy Roman Empire. In August 1619, the Bohemian Diet chose Frederick, who was Charles's sister Elizabeth's husband, who led the Protestant Union, as their monarch, while Ferdinand was elected Holy Roman Emperor in the imperial election. Frederick's acceptance of a Bohemian crown in defiance of the emperor marked the beginning of a turmoil that would develop into the 30 Years' War. I do feel that all roads lead to Rome, and that would include the Roman Catholic Church and the Holy Roman Empire. Yeah, a lot of research to do here. I'll have to get it in when I can, because it is going to be a huge amount. So I'll do what I can. I've also made a formal complaint to my local police. They've been focusing very much on hate speech and just speech in general. So I've made a formal complaint to them. I'm in the middle of formal complaints to a lot of people, so I'm going to be sort of dealing with a lot of administration stuff over the next few weeks. So I'll try to upload 2 videos a week. I'll try and keep the Substack going each week, but I may reduce my videos to 1 a week. Anyway, I want to know, the video was about me wanting to know what happened after Charles I rather than what happened beforehand, because everyone's talking about what happened beforehand and how he was a tyrannical king and deserved to die, but the government became equally as tyrannical. And also the thing about the government is that it takes it takes the responsibility away from the one man, and it sort of distributes it between multiple people. So when you've got multiple people holding on to all that responsibility, they can say, oh, it wasn't me, it was such and such. Oh, it was that one in the opposition. Oh, no, it was my colleague here, he forgot to write this letter. It becomes murky, and I've never been a royalist. I've always sort of despised the idea of a monarch, and we don't have a monarch in the sense that we would have done back then. It would have been the monarch was wholly responsible. Now all they do is sign off legislation. They give it royal assent, and that's it. They're just a showpiece now, rather than, because I think it was a constitutional monarchy, which Britain was. And that is definitely not the case now. It's just a showpiece monarchy, and the government rules the show. And that means that no one takes responsibility, because they can always place the blame on someone else. So as much as I don't like a ruler or something like that, I do think it's probably better than having a government for the reasons that I've just said. Anyway, we'll have a look at all of this, but it will take some time. So that's what I'm planning to do. If you know any bits and pieces to it, let me know. I do have more of a legal channel. Kath Ede is more of a history channel, so I will be uploading it to my other channel. If you want to go and join there, I can't say the name because it is really heavily censored, and that's just because if you look in my Substack, you'll see that I went through a legal battle and I did win. I did have to self-represent, but since I've been doing that, that channel hasn't grown. It's every time I upload a video, I lose a handful of subscribers. And also when I do comparisons between the videos uploaded on there, on that channel and this channel, despite the number of subscribers, it's just not getting the same amount of views as I am on this channel. So I don't know why that is, but it's something that I'm keeping a record of so that I can use it if I need to for discrimination or whatever. Anyway, please subscribe to this channel and the other one if you can, and then we'll have a look into these laws and into what was going on at that time. And let me know, do you think that Charles I's execution, do you think that that was a trauma event, a deliberate trauma event to subdue the population? Do you think it actually happened? Yeah, tell me what you think. Bye.